In a future world, the poor have been reduced to nothing more than entertainment for the rich. The moment they turn 18, they're locked away in sealed rooms, forced to perform in front of cameras day and night, surviving only on tips from viewers. One day, Carl attempted a difficult backflip and, to his surprise, quickly earned a $16 tip. Having gone hungry for 7 straight days, he immediately punched in an order for some KFC to fill his stomach. But the balance in his account wasn't nearly enough for real food. All he could afford was a bag of dog food. Just when he was about to give up hope, Carl had a stroke of genius. He decided to dress up like a dog and eat the entire bag on all fours, mimicking a dog's every move. To his amazement, this stunt not only solved his hunger problem but also drew in viewers, earning him another $30 in tips. With some cash in hand, Carl quickly bought himself a shirt and went back to his handstand routine. After a lot of hard work, he finally saved up $40 and bought himself a bed to rest on. Once he got a taste of what performing could bring him, Carl threw himself into it even harder. He started dreaming of getting rich this way and eventually moving into the luxury mansion he'd always wanted. What he didn't realize was that the daily tips barely covered a single decent meal. Living day after day like a monkey putting on a show for an audience slowly wore Carl down, and he began to feel exhausted and fed up. One night, after drinking too much, all the emotions he'd bottled up came pouring out. He lost it, grabbed a bottle, and started smashing it against the camera. In that moment, Carl was sick of this life. He felt like a circus animal, one who had to keep performing just to earn the right to stay alive. Meanwhile, his account balance was slowly draining away. Eventually, the whole room went dark, and the system shut down. Carl had no idea what had happened, but he was too tired to think about it and quickly fell asleep. When he woke up, though, something felt off. No matter what he tried, the system wouldn't respond. He hadn't eaten in 2 full days, and the hunger pangs were making him more and more desperate. Carl knew that if things kept going like this, he'd starve to death. So he got down on his knees in front of the screen and started apologizing over and over, admitting he'd been wrong and begging the system for another chance. He promised he'd work harder and put on better shows for the viewers. Sure enough, after all his pleading, the system came back online. But this time, a small unfamiliar window popped up in the bottom left corner of the screen. Inside it, an old man was giving a history lesson. When the old man noticed Carl, he calmly introduced himself and explained that once you earned enough tips, the system would unlock new features. That was how Carl had been able to connect to his screen. The old man also revealed that he'd been trapped in his room for 68.5 years. Day after day, he'd been talking about history in front of the camera, scraping by on viewer tips, with his balance never rising above $12 or so. Now that their screens were connected, the old man saw it as an opportunity. If they worked together and put on a better show, maybe they could both earn more tips. The old man suddenly remembered that he'd learned some magic tricks back when he was younger. If he taught them to Carl and combined them with Carl's over-the-top goofy performance style, they might be able to draw in a bigger crowd and rake in more tips. Of course, Carl would have to share a cut of the earnings with the old man. Carl had no problem with that. So from that day on, aside from eating and sleeping, he poured all his energy into learning magic. At first, Carl messed up a lot during his shows, but it turned out that those slip-ups, combined with his exaggerated clownish antics, gave the whole act a hilarious edge and pulled in more and more viewers. The more he practiced, the better his magic got, and the more popular his shows became. His signature hand gesture, in particular, became his trademark move. Before long, Carl's account balance broke $2,000. His classic magic routines had won over the audience, and the system unlocked another new feature for him. Now Carl could search through other rooms and watch other performers. One day, he stumbled across a beautiful woman named Lisa practicing yoga. Intrigued, Carl sent her a $20 tip, and she responded with a heart emoji to say thanks. That was when it finally hit Carl. All those tips he'd been receiving had come from strangers watching him too. Just then, a new window popped up in the top left corner of his screen. Inside, a woman was taking a shower. When she realized someone had connected to her feed, she stormed out and started yelling at Carl, accusing him of hacking into her camera without permission. Carl quickly explained that he hadn't meant to intrude. She'd hit the tip threshold the system required, which had unlocked the ability to connect with other rooms. It was the same as when he and the old man had first connected. This was just another one of the system's new features. With a new member on board, Carl felt like they finally had a real shot. He figured that if the 3 of them teamed up and came up with more interesting content, they could pull in more viewers and earn more tips. But Mary flat out refused. She threw out a question that stopped everyone cold. Why was everyone content to sit around in these tiny rooms, pandering to strangers for tips? Had no one ever thought about actually getting out and seeing the world? Her question left everyone in the room speechless. After a moment, Carl slowly spoke up and said that he'd actually tried to rebel once, but the system's punishment was so brutal it had nearly cost him his life. The fact that he was still alive was, in his eyes, a small mercy in a terrible situation. After hearing Carl's story, Mary started to understand where he was coming from. In the end, she agreed to join their team, because no matter how important your dreams are, you have to stay alive first before you can chase the life you really want. After Mary joined, the 3 of them started putting on better and better shows, and Carl's tips grew fast. Enough, in fact, to buy a luxury mansion. But as they kept working together, cracks started to show. Their goals were completely different, and Mary often clashed with Carl and the old man. She was always thinking about how to escape the place holding them captive, while the old man was focused on scaling up their broadcasts to earn more tips. During one particularly heated argument, the old man got so worked up that he suddenly broke into a violent coughing fit. It looked like years of stress combined with the fight had finally taken a serious toll on his body. At first, everyone thought it was just a minor incident, but by that evening, the old man's condition had taken a sharp turn for the worse. He grew weaker and weaker, and eventually collapsed at his computer, unable to move. Watching the old man deteriorate, Carl and Mary set aside their arguments and immediately started trying to save him. They tried reaching out to people in other rooms, hoping someone could help, but before anyone could respond, a fire suddenly broke out in the old man's room. The flames spread fast, engulfing the whole room and even the old man himself. Then the video feed cut out for good. The scene left Carl and Julie devastated. They finally understood how the system's brutal elimination rule worked. The moment someone stopped being useful, the system would toss them aside without a second thought, sometimes with a death sentence. Carl's mind went blank. He couldn't accept that the old man, who had been by his side for so long, was just gone like that. For the first time, he felt real fear. If one day the system decided he was no longer valuable, would he meet the same end? That thought made Carl more determined than ever. He had to find a way out of this room, but for the next few days he just couldn't pull himself together. His broadcasts lost their usual spark, and he seemed drained. Luckily, he still had Mary by his side. She kept encouraging him and slowly reignited his hope. But they quickly realized that with just the two of them, cracking the system was nearly impossible. So Carl decided to use his influence and rally more people through his broadcasts to join the search for weaknesses in the system. He wanted everyone to weave their ideas into their daily performances, using the shows to communicate with each other and search for a way out together. Then Carl revealed the truth behind the rooms to all his viewers. He told them that anyone deemed useless by the system would be immediately eliminated and consumed by fire. He believed that the more people who knew the truth, the more would step up to fight back. But just then, Carl's screen suddenly connected to another room, and the person on the other side was Lisa, the woman he'd been watching all along. Just a simple hello from her left him tongue-tied. Lisa told Carl she'd been watching his shows all along because his performances always brought people joy. But standing off to the side, Mary looked skeptical. The whole thing felt too convenient, like this woman wasn't as innocent as she seemed. Sure enough, late that night when everything was quiet, Lisa quietly got up and reached out to Carl on her own. She urged him to stop looking for a way out and to give up on the idea of the outside world. The way she saw it, staying was not such a bad thing. Carl had already become a bit of a star as a streamer, and if he just kept performing, he could have a great life ahead of him. But the next morning, Mary woke up and immediately told Carl to check out what everyone else was streaming. Almost every room was now buzzing with discussions about how to crack the system. In one room, a woman had even figured out she could control the sprinkler system inside. It suggested that every room might have its own hidden weakness, and if they kept trying, they'd surely find a way out. But Carl started to waver. He began to think that maybe not everyone wanted to leave. Take Lisa, for example. She'd gotten used to this life and even enjoyed it. Maybe they didn't need to force everyone to fight back. When Mary heard that, the smile vanished from her face. She sternly reminded Carl that the system had been watching their every move, and Lisa was very likely a plant sent by the system to stop them from digging any deeper. Mary's words left Carl deep in thought, and he couldn't sleep that night. Later, he secretly checked the old man's old room, only to find someone new had already moved in. Looking at the confused, lost expression on that person's face, Carl saw himself when he had first arrived. In that moment, his resolve came back stronger than ever. He had to break this cruel, endless cycle. The next day, Carl put the next phase of his plan into action. He asked every single viewer to send him just a small tip so he could figure out exactly how many people were caught up in this system. But the results blew past anything he'd expected. In no time at all, his account balance exploded, blowing right past $100 million. Staring at the staggering number, Carl was completely stunned. The commotion woke Lisa up. When she saw the astronomical balance in Carl's account, her expression turned sour. She angrily accused him of stealing everyone's money and demanded he return the balance to their rightful owners. Watching all this unfold, Mary got worked up too. She fired back at Lisa, saying she was clearly a spy sent by the system. The harder Lisa tried to stop Carl from investigating, the more it proved he was getting close to the truth the system was hiding. Before anyone knew it, the argument between the two women exploded, like someone had lit a fuse. Neither would back down, and neither could convince the other. At the peak of the fight, Mary suddenly announced Lisa's room number on camera and urged everyone hunting for system weaknesses to attack her room. The next second, it started raining inside Lisa's room. Caught off guard, Lisa jumped at the sudden change, but she quickly composed herself and fired back the same way, announcing Mary's room number to everyone. Carl stood there in shock, watching the whole thing spiral out of control, and desperately tried to stop them. But before he could get the words out, both women's rooms went dark at the same time. And then, that horrific scene Carl would never forget played out all over again. Flames erupted from inside the rooms, quickly consuming everything. In the end, both women were burned to ashes. Watching it all unfold, Carl completely broke down. He couldn't handle another tragedy playing out right in front of him, and he buried his face in his hands, sobbing. Just then, a dazzling light appeared behind him. Carl turned around and saw that a door had opened in his room, one that led to the outside world. Was this the special reward the system had been holding back for hitting $100 million in tips? But to every viewer's shock, Carl didn't step through the door because he knew all too well that the moment he walked out, he'd lose everything he'd built. He'd go back to being a nobody with nothing to his name. But if he stayed, at least he was still a star everyone was watching, a wealthy man with a fortune to his name.